a lot of my life comes together in the Poor People's Campaign, right? So I am an ordained minister in the Presbyterian Church, and I have a PhD in biblical studies, in New Testament and Christian origins, in particular, what the Bible has to say about the poor. But I see myself, in addition to being a mom and a daughter, as primarily an activist, primarily as someone who has been called by God, but to do the ministry of anti-poverty organizing work, and have done so in very grassroots ways for about 25 years, with organizations that are led by, that are developed by poor and homeless people. And, you know, that's really what my call and my life is trying to pull my spirituality and my family and my commitments and my values together to make this country and world more what God intends.
And thank you. That's beautiful. And it sounds exhausting.
Living wage. There is the collection for the poor in Paul's epistles, where it's poor people basically pooling and doing mutual solidarity, mutual aid for other poor people. You know, there is, you know, the inaugural speech of Jesus, you know, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. And what is good news to the poor? It's the ending of poverty. And again, like, you know, there's enough resources in the society. We've seen this, you know, if they can find trillions of dollars to bail out the rich, then we could find the resources to end homelessness and to, you know, have, you know, different and better systems.
So I'm serving now in a congregation, First Presbyterian Church, Palo Alto. It's in Palo Alto. So I don't know if you've ever hung out here. Anytime you're rolling through, coffee's on me. Like we'll get together and.
I love it.
But you know, and this is a church that has a history in activism. Robert McAfee Brown was in this pulpit. I mean, they were, you know, civil disobedience, anti-war activism, asylums, all the things, right? So, but it's still a very wealthy area. And as I decided to come here about a year ago, like all of my friends who are in San Francisco, like, you're going where? Like, what? You're going to, like, they'll call it Palo Alto. Like, you're going, what are you doing? But I've really felt called. Some of the people who called me here on this webinar now, I've really felt called to be here because of their deep commitment to justice, paired with their understanding of faith and how we tell that story. But really, what does a generally wealthy congregation, like who's sitting in this hub of wealth and influence, some would say we can't really participate in the work of justice because it would mean the system in which we have benefited and are built on would fall apart. And so then we're left with nothing. That's one perspective, right? The other is what can we do as a community that is sitting in the middle of this? Like, what is our charge? If you got to tell us, you got to write our mission statement some people might actually write this down and be like, oh, well, Liz said. Like, what do you say to communities like us? Because there are lots of them, right, who are deeply committed to this work, but find themselves in situations of privilege and luxury and all those kind of things, and are trying to work on it. So what do you say to us? Like, what's our call?
Well, so while I do believe, when I look at history, that movements are only successful when those that are most impacted are playing a leadership role, those movements don't just stay amongst the people that are most impacted, if they're going to be movements and if they're going to achieve societal change, right? But actually, you know, are about a massive movement that involves everybody, especially, you know, again, we had the conversation about moral, but as moral standard bearers, like saying that it doesn't have to be this way. And so to have a movement to end racism and poverty that doesn't have people with some resources in it, for one, it doesn't go, not just because people have to donate to make the movement happen. I'm not even saying that, but for it to be something that's actually big enough and powerful enough to be changing society, it has to reach into all sections of society, including and especially places like Palo Alto. So what Dr. King says is that the poor and dispossessed live in a cruelly unjust nation. If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with a freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life. And I read that quote every day because it to me says something about how each of us as individuals and as institutions and as a society can relate to this issue, no matter where we fall into it, right? And what does it look like to help the poor take action together? No, so what is it if there are campaigns around some of these issues, both in the community in Palo Alto and in surrounding California communities, that the church takes a stand on and sides with and comes out strongly around, and doesn't just allow, homeless folks in San Francisco to be the ones raising it, but also finds that they have friends and partners, all over. Like, what is it to think about the resources, again, not just the financial resources, but the connections that people have. Because again, this is about changing the education system. This is about having science for the people. This is about engineering, situations where, we bring about the fullness of what community should be. I mean, so what I'm sure there's all kinds of, beautiful work that people are doing in their lives, and how are those systems in line to actually be a part of make a society where everybody could do better. And so there's a lot that has to happen. There might be more responsibility in a place like Palo Alto than most, to really, live God's call.
Thank you. I mean, you make it sound like it's possible.
It better be. I mean, I think it is, but again, but it also has to be, right? I mean, this is what our Bible traditions tell us, is that this is what God calls for us to do. And when God calls us to do it and we call to God, then it can be done. I mean, other unjust systems have felt like you can never undo them until they were undone, right? And in fact, I think that's a really important lesson, is in fact, we have some friends in South Africa who have this saying that says that a dying mule kicks the hardest. And so what if right now, some of the pain that we're all feeling is a mule that's dying, and it's asserting its racism, it's asserting it's the kind of polarization of wealth, but what if it's actually a sick and dying mule? And what if we can birth something new that's just and beautiful, from this situation?
Amen. God's people say. No, I got more. So I do have.